Kathy, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We're actually just talking a little bit before this, and we started to get into it. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, the purpose and why I'm trying to reach out to folks is to understand uh, what impact or what value do values have on people. And I'm just trying to reach out and understand. I don't know
Mm.
where this is going. I don't know what it means, what it can do, but that's really the purpose. It's just to have a conversation around some of these things. And I think we started to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
what are these things and what do they mean? And you started really getting
exactly.
into it. I'm like, no, no, we have to what to record this.
We have to record. We have to capture this stuff on the recording.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's someone I know, she's a speaker, and she says, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. Now, I know she didn't make that up, but it sticks with me all the time because the other thing I learned when I was training to become a coach was that if I'm irritated or annoyed, chances are someone is stepping on one of my values. And
I
that was
love
just huge for me. I had no idea that that's what it was related to. And I would say that 99% of the time, that is exactly what's happening.
I love that, and I actually share that with a lot of my clients and everybody I work with. I talk about that because one of the first things I do with a client is I go through this core values exploration, I find it helpful, and that's exactly what I say to them. I said, if there's something that's happening, are you aware that it may be rubbing against there's some sort of friction that you're having with who you are that's causing that. And I think a lot of people are not really conscious of that. Oh,
Right. I wasn't. And so it was a huge eye opener for me, because we were talking earlier about mission, vision, and values, right? You hear people, it trips off the tongue. It just sounds really good. I would say it's values, mission, vision, or maybe values, vision, mission. It doesn't sound as good, but I feel like values are fundamental. They're underlying, they're foundational.
so where have you experienced that in your life? So what would be some of the experiences that um, values have provided guidance for you?
Decision making.
Mm.
um, that I run a big decision through my values and see how that stacks up. So that makes it easier for me to make decisions about things in business, even in my life, because I don't want to, well, because I spend a lot of time worrying about decisions and not really having a way to make a decision. And so I would just be like, I don't know, should I go? Should I not? Should I stay or should I
Can I
go?
go now? I
And
should
it
I
would
should
go
not be
back and
doing that with
forth.
a singer, a trained singer.
Yeah, so it was so hard. And then when I learned about values, and it's not that I didn't know, I think they're one of those things that hovers around, but we don't necessarily openly talk about them or identify them.
Yeah,
And so it's
yeah.
one of those things, like so many things in life, that we have end up having to learn about because there's not really a handbook about them.
When did that happen for you? When did you have, for lack of better term, I'll just say awakening, because I think of it almost as an awakening. When did that happen for you?
I've had a number of them, um, but well, the biggest one was replacing judgment with curiosity, or should I say judging, not judgment. Judgment is a good thing. Judging, if it's the best chicken in the coop contest, if it's,
Yeah.
the biggest pumpkin, judging is okay. But I had no idea about the inner narrative I had going in my head. So just didn't pay attention. And my brain is constantly at work and it's constantly got subject matter that it's talking about. So
Yeah.
when I first started listening to my brain, I was just like, oh my God, you are so unbelievably critical. I mean, I just took like a 5-minute walk and I was like, you're going to wear those shoes? And this was all stuff going on in my head. And I thought, I need to get a little bit more aware of this and what it is. Because not only did I say dumb stuff like that I wasn't thinking about, but I also had some really good ideas too. So then you start to be able to sift that out. So that was one of my biggest awakenings because I had no idea how much time I spent in judging other things, people, places, how fast I was walking, whether the trains were on time, if I liked the food, if I liked it, just my head was full of that. And so that was how I was able to finally start sifting and saying, oh, there's more there, and I can make a choice about it if I want to. When I was living in New York, I love New York and all the clothes and the craziness that you see all the time. I call them my
Right.
only in New York moments. And so it was okay to just say, huh. And I would come up with my, well, that doesn't happen everywhere. And
Mm,
then I process it and it's gone. And my brain is left, I don't know how much energy it has in a given day, but it uses a lot. And so, yeah, so I don't know if this is making any sense, but that was the first really big awareness that I had that started to change everything because
so
then I was able to learn about other things.
was it like an evolution, I guess, or it sounded like that sort of just crept up on you? And
Yeah, it was when I was studying to be a coach.
ah,
That's the thing. So I'm a coach. You're also trained as a coach. We go through pretty rigorous training to become coaches. That's why you want to hire coaches who've been through the school, making a little plug for coaches there. And there was an exercise where someone was given, they had to replace judging with curiosity. And when I started doing that, I said, I don't have enough time for this. If
mm,
I were to take notes on what I'm doing, it would be a narrative. And that it set the ball rolling. I mean, it's not that I hadn't done other things in my life.
yeah,
I just wasn't as aware of how much time I was wasting in just these little crazy places, and that my brain, I only have so much energy in a given day, right? And
yeah,
so, and living in the world we live in today with the inputs all over the place, we're all curators now, I'll tell you that. It's not about getting information, it's about deciding which information to use. And so in that environment, it's become, I think, more important than ever to understand what you stand for, and and then when it comes to making decisions, having a way of doing that.
right. Was there a time before that awakening where now, as looking back on it, you could say, ah, there was a conflict, or there was an issue, or there was something that came up, and now I can see it was clearly related to something that ran against my values. Was there circumstances that you can think about that happened prior to that awakening, and
Oh
what
yeah,
did
I
that
have
feel
I
like?
have one way back in the way back time machine when I was in high school. No, I was in junior high,
Oh wow.
and we were doing a UN. So our sociology class was doing this UN, and I said, I want to be the United States. And the teacher said, girls don't really do so well when they take on the United States. And that just made me say, I want to do the United States. I am going to be. And then what that did, it just lit a fire in me. And I just said, I'm going to find all the research all over everywhere and I'm going to nail it. And I got an A plus.
Nice.
So
No
I don't
surprise
know if
there.
that's really about, there was some of it's about giving people the benefit of the doubt. It's about fairness. That's a big thing for me. And it was just like, you didn't even give me a chance. I mean, I have a good grade in your class, and you're already telling me I can't do it.
Wow.
And there was nothing other than that, than the challenge of, you say I can't? Huh, I shall prove you wrong.
Wow. So it was something about fairness that just didn't sit with
It was
you.
just like, give me a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it's interesting because as coaches, we do get trained a little bit of this, and I think sometimes that the exercises around sort of core values and things like that are a bit light,
Mm,
because you go through, everybody says, what are your core values, and they just rattle off words,
right.
right?
Right.
And they leave it at that. But I think what happens is, in the work that I've done, it seems like they have this initial list, and sometimes it's influenced by maybe not things that are truly theirs.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
Have you
We
seen
take on
that?
the values of our parents, of other people around us. I mean, the desire to want to belong. there may be some values there that you're like trying to, and you'll feel that conflict that you're trying to espouse a value that just doesn't work, and it'll feel wrong, especially once you're able to start listening to your body. The body keeps the score. That's not me. That's Wessel Bander. I can't even say his name. Vanderkolk, Bessel Vander. Anyway, he's very, very cool. Um, yeah, it's just very, very hard. And I know there've been times that I've wanted to fit in, but I felt like what everyone was doing was stupid.
Yeah.
But I tried anyway because I wanted to belong. So there are a lot of times in our lives where we will override something because some other need feels greater than holding the value. And I think it takes practice and time and talking it through and having a moment where you can say to somebody, wow, that really did not work out. Here's why. And you're in a place of non-judgment. You just get to say it out loud and process it. And then
Yeah.
say, well, how would I like to act next time?
That non-judgment piece, I think, is so tough for a lot of us. Because I think we see things through so many filters, and that the ability to remove that is difficult, I find.
Super hard. It takes training, I think. It takes practice, like anything. It's a muscle of being able to be in the middle. And I know that when I was in leadership in the financial world, um, I would always put myself through my own little tests to decide if there was like a bias in me in terms of something I had to say to an employee or something, some news I had to deliver.
Oh,
And I
wow.
would check it against somebody else just to make sure that I was really in the middle of this is my role. Like the role that I'm in here is this, and fairness is a very big part of it. So
Mm.
am I being completely fair with this person?
So you would literally
Um,
have that conversation with somebody else as a test, or is that something that you went through
Yeah, I would
internally?
I would do that with, well, in this case, I would call HR and I would just say, here's the conversation I want to have. And so just to hear it through. So it was before I knew coaching existed. If I'd known coaching, I would have gone right to a coach.
Well, the interesting thing that you bring up in the work environment is that I think there's so much more context that values gives us that people don't explore. So I don't know if you agree with that, but we can have an understanding of our own values, but then what does that mean in the context when you're in the workplace?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, that's one thing. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm hoping that I have an opportunity to explore with folks is yes, there is a tremendous amount of work you can do personally, and that can have a tremendous amount of value, but no pun intended. But what does that what does that mean when you are in the workplace? And what does that
Right.
mean in today's environment when we have this virtual, workplace, and then we have this? I don't know, and I don't know what
It's
people.
a it is such a great question because I keep thinking of leadership and how leadership looks. And there's what we say, and then there's what we do. And people are going to take the cues from the stuff that's being done more than what people say, almost always. And so, if you're in leadership, what kind of tone are you setting? Um, what kind
Yeah.
of an environment are you creating? What kind of self-awareness do you have? And if that isn't there, then people kind of draw their own conclusions and create their own values. It's kind of like, who is the guy with the dogs? And if a dog was misbehaving, he put him with the pack because the pack would help the dog understand where the dog fit because the human owners didn't take charge, or they didn't show any leadership. And so the dog's like, all right, I'm just gonna throw up all over everything. I
Oh
don't
my God,
know.
that is an amazing analogy. I never thought about that. That's incredible, and
Yeah.
I can totally see that in the workspace. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's
We make our own decision. We're like, okay, well, nobody's doing anything here. So that vacuum, we are storytellers. We are gonna put something in there, whether it's true or not.
yeah. Well, yeah, there's yeah, I share that too. In a vacuum, people will create their own stories.
Yep.
It's interesting. I mean, I've had clients where um, the vision, mission, and values are on the wall. People got their little cards of it, right? They're reminded of it. But there's people in that leadership role that don't reflect those values, or they may talk about them, but their actions and behaviors are completely different.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. I remember in one of my work environments that somebody went and hired a consultant to help us come up with our mission, vision, and values. And so I was asked my opinion. I said, you need to engage a bunch of people in the organization around this. It's not just this little thing that you want to do so you can come up with some pat, oh, we live our passions and our values, because then it isn't anything. It stands for nothing. And then nobody knows that nobody it hurts the organization too in terms of decision making, the type of business you're going to do, the way you're going to do business, all of that. And so what happens with things, I just love the human spectrum or the human continuum of things we do. We start checking boxes. I got my mission, vision, and value statement,
Yeah.
right? I've got it. Not one person lives it. It's not easy. None of this stuff is easy. That's the other thing. So I'm not I'm not just like outright saying, what's wrong with you people? You can't. It's hard to do this stuff and get it as part of a regular practice. But like exercise, it helps create this foundation that gets stronger and stronger.
What is something that maybe you would recommend to a client or a company that may have that question? What would be something that you would offer?
You know, I I think it helps. There's been a lot of talk these days about some of the tests that we do, the assessments and things like that.
Yep.
As long as the information isn't weaponized and it's used well, it's helpful to understand who people are and where they come from.
Yeah.
So something that helps you get a sense of how people operate in the workplace. So you may know of some, I don't know a lot of them, but there may be some that work very, very well, just to help people understand more about how they resonate in the world and the things that they respond to. And once we have an understanding of that, I remember one of our offices, the entire office did the MBTI years
Mm.
ago. And the effect was fantastic because one person who loved to just like leap in and say, this is what I need now, said, I need to think about that before I go over to this person in order for me to get what I need. And so everybody just started communicating better and respecting each other and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. That kind of space is huge in
Oh,
a
that's amazing.
workplace.
Yeah. And there is a lot of talk of assessments. And I
Yeah.
think that the biggest benefit of assessments is exactly what you mentioned, is that communication piece. I think sometimes it's not even the assessment itself, because I mean, how many times have you seen this, Kathy, where they do the assessment and it goes in a drawer?
Hmm. Yes.
Right. And it's like, what did
What?
we do? Yeah,
What?
they go through a 1 day seminar and like I'm an ITJ or I'm a high, D in the disc and all
Right.
that other kind of stuff. But I think the power of all that stuff is really in the communication and discussion around the assessments.
And you bring up such an important thing, is that it is the practice. I've been strength training for the last 2 years. I can't believe that I've been doing this, but I continue to do it. But there's still a part of me that wants to have a day where it's like, okay, you don't have to do that anymore. There's something about how we're built with goals in mind that I want to reach this point, and then I don't know, maybe I can blame it on Ron Popeil. He was the guy with the like set it and forget it. He was this incredible marketing guy.
Yeah,
His company
that's
was
right.
Ronco, right?
Yeah,
It was like set it and forget it. I'm
yeah,
like, that's my motto.
yeah.
That's what I want to be able to do. I'm just going to set it and forget it. And it's just like I have been trying to get rid of that notion in my head for
That's
years.
funny.
And so the same thing in the workplace is that if we have this meeting, then we have some follow-ups, and that, we bring stuff back up, 6 months from now and see how everybody's doing, or we create some kind of a plan so that we're given a chance to implement and learn it and make it part of our language. And the
Yeah.
beauty of these is that it creates a common language. And again, your values create a common language too about how you talk about things.
You mentioned something, not the Ronco, because that's beautiful. It was the chicken, right? Or the turkey. Set it and forget it, right? You had mentioned goals. How do you see values impacting goal attainment or setting of goals, or how are they connected, or are they connected?
Wow, that's such a good question. And goals, I have such mixed feelings about them because
Oh, tell
again,
me.
it's how I think it's all how we use these things. A goal is a great, it's good to have something, to pin something down and say, by this time, this is, so if I'm working with someone who's trying to make a decision about whether to stay in their role, they know that in 3 months, the performance reviews are going to happen. Okay,
Yeah.
so we might put a stake in the ground there and say, after that, then we're going to talk about how it went, what you think, and then whatever the next steps are. So it is valuable to have those goals. The biggest difficulty with goals is that we meet them and then there's nothing. So, there has to be some level of sustainability, and I think it's the sustainability and
Mm.
in iterability. I don't even know if that's a word, but
It is now.
it's something that we do have to repeat,
Yeah.
and so there is a little bit of frustration around that because it's just like, really? Oh, that's me. Like in my head, sometimes my first thought is just like, really? How do I have to do this forever? Well, not forever, maybe just for now. But yeah, goals can be very valuable, and they also, anything I think can be weaponized and used as a battering ram, right? And that's
Yeah.
the thing we want to make sure we don't do.
I think that goes back to intention, right? Yeah, I
Mm,
think there's a lot of corporations that they set the goals. I see corporations sometimes that, and I'm sure you've seen this too, where they don't even solidify their goals for the year until like April of the respective year. So
right.
I don't understand that. And then to your point, accountability of that. What is that? Is it another check the box exercise, sort of like the assessments? We've done that. We put in a drawer, go away, and then when it's time to calibrate, we revisit that stuff. I don't know.
It might be, I think it's an excellent point. That's what performance reviews are. If you're a good leader, you're in touch with people all the time. So nothing in a performance review is a surprise. It shouldn't be.
Right.
There's nothing that talking to people and having a relationship and understanding what people are doing, that's everything. Because then if something is happening or if someone is kind of, maybe they just don't seem that motivated or something's going on, you can dig in right away and
Yeah.
either get that person some help they need or get them back on track. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a mentor earlier on in my career when I started back in the day in accounting, and he told me a couple things. One of was if you don't take control of your career, somebody else will, which I
Hmm.
thought was interesting. And the other one was exactly what you had said, that if I get to you by the end of the year and I tell you you're bad or you're doing things wrong, it's a failure on my part that I
Right,
haven't been, watching you and taking care of you and mentoring you and developing you. That's a
right.
reflection on me. And that sort of always stuck with me. And I'm shocked when, people do get surprised at
Yeah.
those sort of evaluations at the end, because I don't think that should happen. Especially,
Well, because if they're not aware, then it's a blind side at the same
yeah,
time. So you've just brought something up that may have been true 6 months ago, but is not true now, or there's no way to apply it. And one of the easiest ways to be able to, like when you're handling emotions and things like that, is to be able to be specific about what it's about. When an emotion gets triggered, if I know it's related to this disappointment, then I can kind of ride the wave and ride it out while my little chemical reactions in the body just kind of sift themselves out. But if you don't know, then you're backtracking to places where you're trying to piece it all together. So you're
yeah,
not doing anybody any favors by holding off on that feedback.
yeah, it is kind of crazy. Um, I was wondering if we can shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
So, can you tell me from either growing up or now, like who have been your heroes, or in somebody that inspires you?
Wow. That's wow, what a great question. There were different people. Some of them were just regular, normal humans that didn't have name recognition. I remember having a humanities teacher in high school who was really, really, she was tough, but in a good way. And so we would read things and we would just learn so much because she really helped us to think things through. And I've always valued that course. There were three elements of it. And I took all three, and it was hard for me to even get a B plus in there. but I
Yeah.
valued that probably more than anything because of how much she gave and how
Mm.
much we learned about learning. So that was really important. I also like, one of my favorite singers is Barbara Streisand. I just love she does what she does. She's like, I have this voice, I have this gift, and this is my thing. And it's so hard to be an artist,
Yeah,
you
no kidding.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's really, really hard to be an artist and just stand your ground and say, no, this is what I'm doing. So I loved the sound of her voice, but I also just loved that she was just her. She's like,
Mm.
I don't like your clothes. I don't care that you don't like my clothes, and that's just always something good. But in terms of leadership, you know, it's really important. I think back, one year we gave our clients this book of all the presidents that one of our clients had written in. I remember looking back and reading about George Washington and thinking, despite all the stuff we now know about being slaveholders and all of that, we could have gone a completely different way. So if
Mm.
you look at the leadership aspect of what he did in terms of where the country was going, he made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I love reading history for that reason, because you just realize how precarious it is almost all the time. Even though now we're like, well, these are crazy times. Yeah, they've been crazy all the time.
Yeah.
They're crazy always.
Yeah,
We just,
there was no TikTok or Facebook or anything
no.
else back then.
You have to wait until the boat arrives, or the Pony Express or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm always interested in people who are good leaders too. I just can't think of anybody right now. I do love Sark. I got to work with her. Her name is
Yeah.
Sark. She's out of California, and she wrote a number of books. And she's another one of those people who she held like all the jobs. She just
Mm.
did all kinds of jobs. She bartered for like 10 years of her life. There was like no cash involved. She just bartered. She'd house sit. She'd do all these things. And she has this amazing career as a coach. And I really, that takes so much courage to do that.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of admiration for that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
So you had mentioned fairness was one of your core
Mm.
values. Would you share what else makes up Kathy, and what are your core values?
Yeah, judgment is a biggie for me too. And so judgment in the sense of discernment, of really looking something over, and again, there's where the fairness comes in. And again, I know, the first thing most people will say is life isn't fair. So true. I wish it were. It just isn't. And it's really hard. But in the context of what I'm working on, have I been thorough before I've made a decision on something? That's really
Mm.
important to me. Gratitude for me is a lifesaver, because in the midst of everything, to be able to stop and notice a flower and appreciate it, or to look out the window, or to take a deep breath, that ability to be able to stop, is huge, and be thankful for the things I have. Because, the fact of the matter is, there's a lot we can all complain about. And at the same time, if you don't have it balanced out with gratitude, you're going to be a pretty ornery person all the time. So gratitude has been very important. I also appreciate beauty and excellence. So I love it when something is done well. I remember going backstage to one of the Broadway shows and seeing how well choreographed backstage work was done.
Mm.
There was a poetry there, that as
Yeah.
much as what you see on the front, but backstage, every element that had to be in place, where people had to be in those theaters where there's not a lot of space. And so I have such an appreciation. I'm always looking, whenever I go anywhere, I look at staff and how people are treated, what the work environment is like, how people like their work or don't like their work, the way they work. That matters to me more than anything, because the work we do, you can call it a job, a career, a calling. It doesn't matter so much as long as you're content doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's a whole nother subject. But those are some of my biggies. And humor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Where
almost
would we
missed
be
that one.
without that?
No, and humor. When you think of what laughing does and how it gets the diaphragm going, and it's good for you. Humor is just so good for us.
Yeah, there is a whole neuroscience behind that for sure.
Yeah.
So I am gonna prove to you that I do some research, and you let me know how this question will land on you.
Okay.
So, given the lenses of those values that you have from a core values perspective, how do you think that impacted your experience in Spain in '81?
Ah,
Do you want to
it
do
was such a good experience. Oh my gosh.
you want to
It
give
was,
I read it about it on your website, but for people who are
yeah.
listening, do you want to give a
Yeah, you know, it was one of the it was another, that was another moment of awakening for me. Because you can't see me because we recorded this podcast, but I do not look like a Spaniard from any part of the country. And so I went there having studied Spanish and went there to live. And this was when it was about 5 years after the death of Franco. So they'd had a dictator for 50 years, and there were about 22 political parties trying to make their way.
wow?
And you had, and I was clearly American. I was painfully American, like just my, even though my Spanish was quite good. Um, but it just taught me so much because I stood out a lot, and people called me out. People blamed me for what the president did. People,
Really?
so this happened a lot. And yet I loved Spain and I loved my experience. I was able to be there and not hate everybody because of what happened. There were people who were really, really angry. They'd be like, Yankees fuera, get those Yankees out of here.
Mm,
And but I could understand where they were coming from. And I would just say, well, I'm a student, I'm living here. Can I get a little bit of credit for like showing up and
yeah, yeah.
trying to understand what's happening here and have a lens, a newer lens. The other thing was some of the things at first I would criticize when I went there, and like the way it would take like 20 people to move a car, and it was just like, oh, but they're all employed,
Mm,
so may take that many people, but these people are employed, so they have some kind of gainful employment. And so it really just taught me to give the benefit of the doubt, to sort of say, why is this like this? And of course, the big thing was there was a huge, they tried to take over the government when I lived there in 1981. And my first thought, true to tell, as a college student was, oh shit, if I don't get credit for this semester, I'm going to be pissed, because it happened in February and I'd already been there about 5 or 6 weeks. And so that was my first thought. And I was just like, someone's trying to take over the government, Kathy. Let's just have a little bit of a wake up call. See how nobody's out on the streets except for you and your roommate? You know what you need to do? Go home. And it was just so important, because you can live a life and not really pay attention to what's happening. And fortunately the problem was solved fairly quickly. But I value that experience immensely, because it really did teach me what it was like to stand out and be called out for it, not necessarily for good things,
wow.
and so to constantly be identified as American, when there was some anger toward that, and yet loving the Spanish people, loving my studies, loving what I learned. And I loved the lifestyle there. The
Yeah,
cafe, being
yeah.
able to sit in a cafe all afternoon and study and not have someone rush you out the door.
Aspirational. Well, I can see how some of the things that you had talked about in terms of gratitude and fairness sort of may have been manifested or was maybe even resident in you back then.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because you have a choice about how you want to tell the story of where you were.
Yeah.
And I have one more, and I know we're probably getting, close to time, but
Okay.
when for years and years, I was sure that my yearbook slogan was, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And I had a whole story about that, a whole story. And then many, many years later, my husband looked it up and found my yearbook online. And he was like, that wasn't what you're saying was.
Oh, really?
And I was like, oh no. Mine was, when you say goodbye, always leave them laughing.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, well, that's really, really good. But I painted a whole story around when life gives you lemons, depression. And again, these are all part of my story. But it was so interesting to see how the way I thought it was different from when you say goodbye, always leave them laughing. It's just like, leave things in a good state. Don't
Yeah.
burn bridges, even though I was a notorious burner of bridges in my youth. Learning how to not do that, learning how to say goodbye and, end something before everybody's all angry and ready to kill each other is really important.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Holy cow.
Joke's on me.
Yeah. Well, we've known each other for several years, and I did not know a lot of things that we talked about today, especially the whole Spain thing. I was looking up some information and I came across that.
Mm,
And that's amazing. And I was like, there's no way I can't sort of
mm.
ask about that experience and how it
So
relates to who you
meaningful.
are. Oh, so
It
thank you for
was,
sharing that.
I needed that. I remember someone came up to me and said early on, "What do you think of American imperialism?" I'm like, "What is that, margarine?" And I joke about that, but within short order, I knew what that was, and I started studying poli sci the
Oh,
minute I came
wow.
back to the States.
Wow. Wow. It is amazing. It is amazing what happens to us. So
Yeah.
if there's one takeaway from today in terms of a discussion that somebody may want to hold on to or grab as it relates to values, what would be something that you would share with them?
Um, I would say do a values exercise. Just write down the things that matter to you. What matters most to me? And just take a moment and reflect on that. It doesn't have to take that long. Write a few words down. I know there's some where you can look up a whole bunch of, you can find online, like they could list a whole bunch of words that are values.
Yep.
And you take it down to, like, you start with 10, then you cut it down to 5, then you cut it down to 3, which really hurts your brain, but it's a really good exercise because that's what it took to get my point of view about giving people the benefit of the doubt. It is not easy for me to do that, but that is my motto. Always give people the benefit of the doubt. That's where I need to go every single time. And so I try to honor that, even though I know my husband can tell you a lot of examples where that did not happen.
Well, thank you very much for that. If somebody wanted to do that exercise with you or just talk about core values or anything else, related to the great Kathy, what would be a great way for them to get in touch with you?
Oh, my website, www.kathykeegan.com. There's a thing so you can set up an appointment. We can do a 30-minute call. And it's just fun to talk with people through things. Sometimes just a phone call and people get enough perspective that they're like ready to do the next thing.
Yeah, cool. I hope people take the opportunity to do that because I'm telling you, 30 minutes with you is definitely inspirational and can change a lot of things in your life for sure. So I hope they
Oh,
reach out.
Thomas, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I definitely had a good time, and hopefully
Me
some people.
too.
Yeah.
Great questions.
All right, Kathy. I'll talk
All
to you
right.
soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye.